I think it's really important. I mean, I feel my life has kind of four quadrants, and it's my family, it's my work, it's my health, and it's my community.
I love it.
And so it's finding time for all of those elements and not letting one element supersede the others.
Right.
Because as soon as that happens, you kind of get unbalanced, maybe
Hmm.
stressed out, different things happen. And it does happen at times, but I'm someone that I just try to be aware and then just make changes.
Yeah.
And no is a powerful word.
Yeah.
So that you don't get overwhelmed, and you can't be everything to everyone at all times.
Love it.
So it's really important to kind of figure out um, how to create that balance. And personally, I really feel that it's taken me some time, but I
Yeah.
have figured it out.
Greetings, I'm Mark Riley, and welcome to the Washington Tattoo Podcast, where the world's musical traditions come to life. The Washington Tattoo is an international music and arts festival coming to the Washington, D.C. metro area. Our podcast explores the lives and stories of world-renowned musicians, dancers, producers, choreographers, artists, educators, arts advocates, and those who serve our cultural communities at large. For more information and donations, find us at www.thewashingtontattoo.com. Now please enjoy this episode of the Washington Tattoo Podcast, sharing the power of the arts, one story at a time.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Washington Tattoo Podcast. We have the incredible Libby Westphal on the other side here. Libby, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
This is super exciting. Air Force veteran, cancer survivor, fitness coach, Mrs. USA Transcontinental. This is, amazing. It's a huge honor to have you on here. So I would really kind of love to just kind of dive in on just you and the beginning of your story, how you got your start, and just kind of tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me today. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a military vet. I'm a 4-time cancer survivor. And the thing that backs all that up is that I'm a small town girl that grew up on a farm, and kind of with those small town values of working hard and, being honest and believing in something, and, having a tight-knit community. And those really have been kind of the tenets of everything that I've done kind of my whole life. It's just that upbringing.
Right. I think that's probably the basis for most folks who have found success is, a fundamental set of values and work ethic. And it seems that throughout your entire story, you can almost see that woven through the fabric the entire time.
I hope so.
Well, that's great. So, growing up, was the Air Force something that you thought you would ever get involved in? What kind of drew you to the Air Force?
It was that small town. I grew up on a farm, and early on, I knew that I did not want to be a farmer.
Yeah.
So it really was an avenue to get out of that small town, which I love now, but just, as a teenager, I wanted a career, I wanted to travel, I wanted to go to school, and I really felt that serving our country would be a good avenue to kind of take care of all of those things. And I actually chose the Air Force because one of my friends from high school had gone into the Air Force. And so I just kind of followed in her footsteps. And I really did not know that I had service members in my own family until I actually went in myself. And then I found out that my uncle and a couple of my cousins had actually served in the Army. So I guess I got it honest, but I just didn't know.
Yeah. No, that's incredible as well because neither of my parents served in the military. And then when I looked back on it, I had uncles, my grandparents had
Mhm.
served, and it was one of those things that maybe not everyone brought up first, but after you kind of dug into their story a little bit, they brought up, the act of serving their nation. And then when you look at their story kind of wholesale, you start to see that leadership, that came out throughout their life. And there were definitely those fundamentals between their actions and that active service in the military.
Absolutely.
So that kind of brings me to a question as well when we're talking about leadership, things like that. Obviously, on a farm, you have to be disciplined, I would imagine, to get up early and do everything that you need to do on a farm. Can you talk a little bit about some of just those leadership traits that maybe have come from your upbringing into the Air Force?
I would say that a lot of the values that I was taught on the farm, my father was really strict. So when I went to the Air Force, I transitioned in pretty well. But probably the thing that I really took away from the Air Force was teamwork and camaraderie. And when I went in, I was intel, and I quickly learned and knew the importance of my job, and that it really was an integral part of a big piece.
Right.
And so it was the difference between, national security being jeopardized, or us going to war or not going to war. And I was 18.
Wow.
And so it was just this thing of just knowing that I was a big part of a larger team, and that
Right.
what I did mattered. And then other things that come to mind about military service, like you said, discipline, planning, um, being detail oriented, because we're executing missions and such. Um, and just always being prepared, being a planner. But even with that, you have to be flexible because things change.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
really feel that those are things that have helped me throughout my entire life, really.
It's incredible. I've always heard that no plan ever survives first contact. So
Yeah, absolutely.
it's one of those things where you hopefully have two or three courses of action that if the first thing fails, then you can lean on the second or third course of action. All right.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Awesome. So, question next is, when it turns into, leadership lessons that you learned in the Air Force, I'm definitely a junkie when it comes to books and things like that. Could you kind of share some lessons learned? Were there some personalities or people that you served with that maybe kind of taught you some lessons that leave an impact on you when it comes to leadership?
I wouldn't say any particular person. I mean, I think that when you have good leaders, you draw attributes from them, and I think I had a lot of good leaders. And then you have other things that you draw upon. And one of the questions I think you were going to ask me was about books.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then what I just wanted to bring up, that one of the books that I read early on was Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Great
And
book. Great book.
and I don't know how many times over my decades of living, and I would say work and personal, have I mouthed the phrases, of those seven things about, win-win situations, about being proactive, begin with the end in mind, and, do first things first, do the boulders, not the sand.
Right.
And I mean, you really can't go wrong with that, no matter what
Sure.
scenario you're in. So
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I mean, and you do a lot of speaking engagements now. And so when you're telling your story and you're talking about leadership and you're trying to engage with an audience, I'm assuming those are things within inside of the presentation that you really try to instill in the audience.
It's funny. Usually when I speak, it's more about kind of more about inspiring and motivating people toward change. And of course, those things have helped me. But it's more of trying to convince people that they're capable of doing the things that they don't think that they're capable of doing.
Yeah.
Because there have been so many aspects of my life that, at 45 years old, I did my first bodybuilding show. I went through 3 months of of chemo, had knee surgery straight out of that. I lost 70 pounds. It's just all of these things. And all it took really was just dedication and hard work. And my charter really has been, when I speak to people, is just to let them know that there's really nothing extraordinary about me. It's just that I'm just this farm girl that was willing to do the work. And so it's more about motivating and trying to inspire people on their own journeys and toward change.
Yeah, I mean, I love that because even when you're talking about just this with a mindset point of view, you have to really determine what your goals are going to be, and that end in mind piece is so critical. So, I mean, what was some of your thoughts when you decided to go into competitive bodybuilding? What were some of the challenges that you first kind of faced with that?
Probably number one was fear, because it was a space that I knew nothing about. But since I tend to be action oriented and process oriented, I just treated it like it was a project, basically. It's
Yeah,
that we have created a plan and you need to execute. And then probably the critical thing was, or is, that you have show day over here. Your dedication along a long period of time matters every day of
yeah,
what
yeah.
the outcome is going to be here. And it's something that you can't short circuit, because I keep telling people, you can't build a glute in 3 weeks. It takes time. So
Right,
you have to be all in from the beginning, because otherwise you're not going to get the outcome that you may desire.
right.
And so I have done 7 of those bodybuilding shows. Each time I learned something and was challenged. And I did my last show when I was 50, and I actually got first place.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
Uh, yeah, and it's just, I look at that and it's, I'm pretty proud of that, because a lot of hard work and dedication, but it was something that I evolved to over time.
Well, and I think that's another piece of it too, is that your commitment to dedication is really powerful. How many people do we all know that maybe for a year or two they commit to something and it's kind of, a flash in the pan, and, they'll work real hard, but all of a sudden they fall off the train. And I know that's kind of something with, every type of project, there's going to be a bump in the road.
Absolutely.
And then that idea of, when you fall off the train, it can't be 3 to 5 days to a week to 2 weeks to 6 months to all of a sudden the train is just gone. It's that constantly hopping back on the
Back
train
on.
when you find yourself falling off. And so I mean, with your battles with cancer, I mean, that was also this big, massive inspiration for me when I first met you, was that, not only did you mentally conquer obviously your fears, but physically you had to go through a lot of challenges physically. And I mean, it's just such an inspiration to see physically you're on top, mentally on top, and just, success wise, your story is incredible. So, I mean, what was that like, having to go through that? And what did you kind of tell yourself that what you needed to know, or what did you need to tell yourself to get through all that?
Um, Faith. I had faith.
Yeah.
My faith was a big driver there. And the other driving force was the acute awareness that I needed to be here. Because at that time, my son was 2.5, 3.
Mm.
And, you probably don't know, but my father died when I was 16. And, I had a first row seat to my mother passing. So I had already experienced death of my
Mm.
own parents. And what I knew was that I really had no choice. It was of paramount importance for me to be here for my son. And I really felt that I needed to invest as much as I could into my own well-being.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
the chemo was like my job, literally. I was on an IV 6 to 7 hours every day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks, and then I would get a week off. And that went on for 3 months. And I just willed myself through it. And I remember I drove myself to every single chemo treatment. And I remember someone telling me that they felt bad for me. They felt badly that my husband wasn't taking me to my chemo treatments. And quite honestly, it was my badge of honor
Mm.
for myself that I had the ability to drive myself.
Right.
So would he have driven me? Absolutely. But
Yeah.
I didn't want him to drive me because I felt I needed that. It was the independence, and it's that I'm on a mission. I can do this, and that's how I got through it. And then the other thing was I planned a vacation as soon as I started chemo. We planned a vacation kind of when they said it was going to be over, so I knew I couldn't fail.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's another thing too. I mean, you just brought up the idea of family and the support system that you have. And obviously, that's just something that every successful person is always trying to find some kind of balance. Whether the balance really is fully balanced, I don't know if that's ever possible, but it's this idea of trying to keep all the plates in the air. And I mean, so how do you find, like, how do you attempt to find balance when it comes to something like this?
Well, I think it's really important. I mean, I feel my life has kind of four quadrants, and it's my family, it's my work, it's my health, and it's my community.
I love it.
And so it's finding time for all of those elements and not letting one element supersede the others.
Right.
Because as soon as that happens, you kind of get unbalanced, maybe
Hmm.
stressed out, different things happen. And it does happen at times, but I'm someone that I just try to be aware and then just make changes.
Yeah.
And no is a powerful word.
Yeah.
So that you don't get overwhelmed, and you can't be everything to everyone at all times.
Love.
So it's really important to kind of figure out um, how to create that balance. And I personally, I really feel that it's taken me some time, but I have figured it out.
That's that's amazing because I mean, so many young professionals are trying to make it or make their, their statement in their career or their life, and they say yes to everything because they never realize when maybe if they say no, is that opportunity ever going to come back again? And as you
Right.
start to kind of mature and you kind of go through a few seasons of life, you start to recognize that you need to be very careful and protective of those times, or you will find yourself completely out of balance. I can totally relate to that.
Absolutely.
Well, I think this hops perfectly into the conversation about community because you are definitely very involved with many communities. And so your outreach and volunteering. Can you talk a little bit about some of the communities that you do volunteer work with?
Sure. So I do give back a lot, and I do like to be involved in my community. And so probably the first thing I want to bring up is that community is not a location.
Hmm.
It's many things. And for me, my communities are, I'm a patriot, a military vet. And so I definitely support our military, our veterans. I have a soft spot for our seniors. So
Mhm.
anything that deals with seniors, I'm all over. And of course, being a health and wellness professional, anything that deals with helping people improve their overall health, I'm all over. And I feel that if you follow kind of where your heart space is, it's easier for you to give back. It's
Yeah.
just it's as natural as breathing. So that's why it's easy for me to, volunteer, for the honor flights. I just became the newest USO volunteer.
Oh, awesome.
And I outwardly share how and where I volunteer, just to give people ideas about things that they could do. Um,
Yeah.
but also just to inspire them to maybe do the same thing themselves. But they don't need to do the things that I do. They find their communities. Maybe
Right.
you're, an animal advocate. You want to, there's plenty of different things. My husband, he supports everything that I do. Um, but his thing is giving blood. He gives blood and platelets, and
Mhm.
he does this monthly. I
Wow.
just do different things. So it's still giving.
Right, right, right. And this is what I love about your story, because I feel like most people that have a great sense of being is because they have a lot of gratitude, they're giving back, and honestly, they have an awareness of kind of how they fit within inside of, their community or anyone's community. If there is this relationship where I'm not there to be a taker, I'm there to be a giver. And I think
Absolutely.
so many people today, they're struggling with, how do I fit? But in reality, is usually as soon as you start giving, you tend to fit in almost immediately. So I love your story about the honor flights. Are there
Mhm.
any specific stories that kind of stick out in your mind about maybe some folks' honor flights or places that you've been where you've helped out there?
I usually greet the honor flights at Dulles. And I mean, when I go there, my charter is to bring joy. That's it. And usually when I go as, my title,
Yeah.
and you know, the faces, the smiles, and how much gratitude they give to me because I came, which I don't deserve anything. I'm totally there for them. So it's really it's my joy and honor to even go and interact with our war vets. And I go to tell them how much I appreciate their sacrifices. And so I do go to Dulles, and then we have local chapters here as part of the honor flight network. And so I'm actually part of the one in Winchester and the one in Loudoun County.
Excellent.
And I actually just got approval to be a guardian.
Oh,
And
wow.
a
Congratulations.
guardian is someone that actually is assigned to a vet. So when they do their tours, you're basically kind of the conduit to make sure that everything goes well for them. So I feel that's a coveted role, and
Absolutely.
I'm super excited. I have my first honor flight in that capacity on the 18th of September.
Wow, that's amazing. I totally have to check back in with you and see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm so excited, really, really excited. And then come to find out with the COVID
Mhm.
restrictions and challenges, you cannot volunteer or interact with the vets unless you have your vaccination.
Got it.
And so what that means is that the pool of volunteers has reduced
Oh,
significantly.
wow. Okay.
So
Just shout
I'm
out.
happy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a shout out for folks who want to volunteer for that, because that's an honorable duty. I can't begin to even mention how many times you're doing a meet and greet with folks and veterans, and I had a veteran tell me this, not too long ago, actually, during a retirement ceremony for a friend. And I was mentioning my own military retirement, and they said, well, welcome to the ranks of the forgotten. Welcome to oblivion.
Oh no.
And it was one of those like shocking moments of, I felt terrible that, folks do feel that way, where they feel forgotten or they feel like they've
Yes.
lost. And you start to just put yourself in their shoes for a moment. And,
Yes.
maybe after that idea of I'm now out of the military, I'm not part of that team, I'm not part of that community anymore, and they kind of go into a shell. And of course, we're always fighting this, monster of PTS or PTSD, and people struggle with that in their own right. So, I mean, I think what you're doing is this really uplifting idea of staying connected with the community. And you're right, you don't have to necessarily have all the same skill sets. If you go through the USO or volunteering to be a community, you can find really any interest that you have. There's a need somewhere for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, and if you come, kind of with an authentic and giving heart, people
Mhm.
know it. I was at the senior center yesterday, and one of the ladies there, she said, I always liked you. And she says, you don't remember this, but she said, one day you were at a veteran ceremony, and she said, you were so kind to my father. So her father was one of the war vets that was at the ceremony. So I didn't know her, but
Mhm.
the thing that she remembered about me was how I treated her father, who was
Wow.
elderly. And
Amazing.
so that right there,
Yeah.
that's my payment. That's my
Yeah.
payment right there.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, so that's why I do it. I like to, my goal is to make every vet that I interact with like they are the absolute most important person on the earth.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, at that, and again, being someone who's also involved with music, and for me, what I watch is I watch kids that come from maybe not the best home situation, where if they come to a music rehearsal, maybe that's the best part of their day because they don't want to go back home to whatever things that they're struggling with. And for a veteran, and we've done some workshops in this past year where we've done workshops for veterans and their kids and played music together and all of that. And the sense of joy
Mhm.
that, no matter if it's music, if it's volunteering, if it's cleaning a neighbor's house, if it's just this act of giving, that just uplifts really everybody who's a part of the situation. And you kind of go, that is really what makes the world go around. And I think really what you bring to the table is your story is incredible. Obviously you've championed and you've won personal wars, and you've been able to go and compete on, one of the largest competitive bodybuilding circuits in the world. And you're showing that people can still grow no matter what the obstacle is. And
Absolutely.
I love that you're doing that for veterans.
It's my pleasure.
I love it. So I do have a couple other questions, and then we'll wrap up with our final four. We did hit on the book one, but I want to hit up with this real quick as well. So in the physique competitive world, can you walk us through that a little bit? Like, what is that? What's the circuit? What's it like? And if people are interested in looking into that, how would they do so?
So that's, as a personal trainer, people come to me often and ask me to train them. So I'm a personal trainer. I'm not a competition coach. But if you are interested in competing, you figure out which federation you would like to compete under, and there are two big ones, NPC and OCB, and I've competed in both. And NPC is definitely the higher regarded one
Hmm.
and more competitive, I'd say. The other thing about NPC is that they do not test for drugs.
Hmm.
And
Interesting. Yeah.
that doesn't mean that competitors use them. But with my background with cancer and my health, that would never be an option for me,
Got it.
which is why when I did my last 2 shows, I switched to OCB just because I wanted to experience it.
Right.
And so I did both. I did well in both. But you figure out which federation you're going to compete in, figure out what category you're going to compete in, and the category would be one that's closest, that fits your natural body structure the best.
Mm-hmm.
And then set out a plan for success.
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually, if you have some muscle development already, 6 to 8 months is probably enough time.
Right.
If you're starting from scratch, could be 2 years, could be
Okay.
18 months, depends on how quick everyone's different.
Right.
But the thing is, you have to have a plan, and you have to execute it, and you have to be disciplined. And the nutrition is just as important as the exercises.
Hmm.
So, and then, and the other thing is with the training, it's that you train body parts. So you're doing chest, back, you are dialing it in, and each of the different categories judge different attributes of your body. And that's one thing that when people are new to this community, they don't know that. So for the women, bikini is the least muscular, and the thing that they judge are your glutes.
Interesting.
And then, as you go up the scale of muscularity, it goes from, kind of your glutes to your back, where, you have lats and all the definition, and, and you're posing, and, so it really is there is a whole process that goes into it, and it's a lot more complicated than most people think.
Right. So, I mean, were you competitive your first few years, or did it take you a little while to build up into I mean, obviously it took a while to get to where you are now, but when did you start feeling competitive? Did it take 2 years, 1 year?
I think that's a hard question, because it really depends on who shows up.
Okay. Yeah.
So you could go to a show, and it really is so subjective. It depends on who shows up. That's it.
Yeah. Well, it's the same.
And then the other thing is, I think what I always tell people anytime I was preparing for a show is that I may not be the best, but I am always going to bring my best.
Mm. Yeah.
And who wants to look foolish on stage? No one.
Well,
So
yeah.
that's motivation right there.
Right. Right.
So when I did my first show, you get hardware, which are these trophies or different things, up until the 5th position. So it's, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So the very first show that I did, I was in the 6th position. And I was convinced I will never do this again. I almost threw up before I went out on stage because I was so nervous.
Yeah.
And so that was it, done. And then I got home and I saw the ranking, and there my name was in position 6, and then the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, they had all placed. And I think at a minimum, I could get to the 5th position.
Right.
So I went back to my husband and I said, I think I'm going to have to do this again.
Yeah.
And so he just says, well, you're the one that has to put in the work. If you're going to do it again, go for it. And so then I got 3rd place.
That's
very
amazing.
happy.
Yeah.
Very happy. And so I think I got 3rd place a couple of times. And then the last show, I got 1st, 2nd, and 3rd.
Wow.
And then I was like, this is a good way to end it. And when I competed, I remember someone that worked at my husband's office. I remember I was in the bathroom. She said, I heard you're gonna do a bodybuilding show. And she looked at me and she says, what makes you think you could do that?
That's
And
crazy. Really?
that's what she said. And then I looked at her and I said, because I can.
Yep.
And that was it. And I said, because I can. And that's kind of, since my cancer,
Hmm.
that really has given me this kind of mantra for my life. And it's that I'm here, as in I'm alive.
Yeah.
I can, as in I'm capable and healthy, and
Yep.
I will.
I love it.
And
I
that's
love it.
that's it. Those are the things that have kind of enabled me and pushed me outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And why did I do a pageant when I turned 50?
Yeah.
Nobody who does that.
Well, I think this bridges into another great question because, obviously, you're a woman leader among giants. And what I think is really impressive is that leaders in general right now, during COVID and everything else, it's a hard time to stay motivated. So, if you could say something to some of the leaders that are out listening today that are just interested in just, what's a food for thought to kind of get me through this challenging time of, some folks are not doing well mentally, financially, there's all sorts of craziness going on, things are kind of unsettled. What would be like maybe a word of wisdom that you could say, to other leaders to kind of get them through, what they're working on?
I've had my own struggles because I had a gym that was closed down and all of that. But it's to stay in the game,
Mm, love it.
keep being a player in the game. And the thing is, your position in the game may change,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
but that's the thing is you have to stay in the game and just daily be making small changes for improvement.
Yeah, I
And
love
I
it.
think if you kind of have that mindset when you get up in the morning, kind of what did I do to improve or make myself better today? You kind of can't go wrong. My son had a conversation with a football coach, and he brought up something about the 1%. He says, 1%. I can't remember who the author. There's a book about the 1%.
Hmm.
And he says, for all my players, I make them write down what their 1% is each day. And he says, well, Fletcher, if you did 1% every day, at the end of the month, you could be 30% better.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, that's a metaphor for life. And those are small little nickels that you invest in yourself, or pennies you invest in yourself every day for an improved life.
I
And
love
I
it.
think a lot of times people they make, they want to climb the mountain in one day,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and that's how you fail.
Yeah, it's that whole get rich quick. It's the soup. It's the success without the work. All of that is hollow. It's all very hollow,
And it's short-lived.
and very short lived. And I think
Short-lived.
that that's what honestly has drawn me to your story so much is that number one, you are completely authentic, and everything that comes out is genuine. And then number two, what I find the most intriguing is every time that you've hit some kind of challenge, you've met it head on. And if anyone says anything of the opposite, you've used it as fuel and
Yeah,
just it's made you go even further.
absolutely.
No, I love it. I think it's incredible. So I'd love to end up with our final four, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
So we mentioned books that have inspired you. Seven Habits. I think that's a fantastic book. Do you have any other ones that you can think of off the top of your head?
I have a personal book, but it feeds, you personally. It's what does everything in your life anyway, and it is Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. The
Awesome.
Untethered Soul. And I love that book. And it took me 7 months to read it because I felt like I'd read a page, but then I'd have to, a couple of pages, then I had to absorb it.
Yeah.
And it really was life changing for me. And the big thing, it was about worry and how worry kind of affects you. And it was the things that he brought up was how you just have to look through things and keep moving forward. And it just really changed how I behaved in my own life for the positive.
Yeah.
So
I love it. That's honestly, any of those books that can shape you that way, I am all about. So I had to take
it
some
was
notes.
literally the first chapter. And then I was like, slow down. Like, we have to really internalize this.
Yeah. And I always think, they always talk about the greatest thinkers and how they have to go on walks to kind of let everything in their mind, simmer and percolate and come up with what they're going to do with the information. And I've heard this before too. If information was the problem, if information was the fix, we would all be perfect. But information is not the fix. It's the action that you take when you receive the information.
Absolutely.
I love it. Do you have a favorite business book?
It would be The 7 Habits. Really.
Okay.
Yeah, it really would be.
Yeah, I think that's a foundational one. That's awesome. So other than bodybuilding and volunteering, what are some hobbies that you have?
I love to travel. I have been to 46 of the 50 states.
Awesome.
I have been to close to 30 countries.
Wow.
And now that we have a son, we love sharing the world with him. So he's 15 and he's been to 30 states.
That's so cool.
30 states and I think a dozen countries. That's
amazing. So when you go on to travel, you go around the world, you go around to all the different states. What's something you do there to take in the local vibe?
Before we were doing more of just, kind of just sightseeing. I would say of late, it's changed a little bit because we have driven. And what I have learned is that I'm drawn more, sure, I like the big cities, but I'm more drawn to these small towns.
Interesting.
This is Americana.
Yeah.
And so if we can go to a small town, have breakfast, and just kind of make someone's day.
I love it.
When you go to these places that people don't expect you to go to, and also introduce other people to those small towns.
Yeah.
So that's my thing. And then for our son, it gives him comparison points to the reality of what our country is.
I love that. Yeah. And I think that's something too. I mean, when you travel around the world and you see folks that are of higher means or lesser means, it gives you a great perspective of where you are in your current situation, because most people in the world are not going to be on that stratosphere way up there financially or anything like that. And then, then you take the very bottom end of the homeless folks that are living on the street. My father was in mental health for the state of New York for 35 years. And I remember growing up, I would spend summers in the Bronx and I'd go to the comic book store with my father and he'd run into a homeless guy and he would start chatting him up and just getting his story and kind of seeing how he was. And, it was just one of those pieces of humanity where,
Yes.
you say, how lucky am I to be where I am? And then obviously with your story, your next piece is, how do I give? Now that I am this lucky, how do I give? So I think that's great that you're teaching that to your son.
Absolutely. I think it changes him in how he views the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. My hat is off to you on that, because I think that's what gives me hope in the future of the world, is having parents that really kind of showcase all of the world and its good and its bad. And you're trying to give them perspective hopefully at an earlier age than we had it as kids growing up, because then you get a leg up on your parents maybe.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Last question. If people want to find out more about you, where can they go to do that?
I'm on social media. If you Google my name,
Yep.
I always tell people, if you Google my name, you may see more of me than you want to.
I love it. I love it.
Because the bodybuilding pictures pop up.
Yep.
But I do have a website, libbywestphal.com, and then I do social media. My mainstream, the one I use the most is Facebook, where you pretty much can get blow-by-blows of my life.
I love it. Well, Libby, thank you so much for taking the time to chat tonight. This has been hysterical. It's been inspiring and honestly just heartwarming. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it. I really do.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Greetings again, everyone. We just wanted to take a second to say thank you to Seif Studios for their creative media. If you want to find out more about Seif Studios, look them up on www.seifstudios.com. We'd also like to say thank you to our educational partner, ProLogix Percussion, American-made drum pads. They're doing a special discount code for our listeners today. So if you go to www.prologixpercussion.com and type in TWT20, you will receive 20% off your entire order. So thank you very much for tuning in today, and please check out our supporters.